The first time I got interested in game jams was when I found the Pixel Prophecies YouTube channel in the May of 2017, I think, but I didn't feel like participating in one up until this April. I nearly changed my mind about it because at that time I couldn't make any art assets. I mean, yeah, I could draw something in paint and make some models from primitive shapes, but they were pretty horrible. And I could only record music solely consisting of guitar and lots of noise, and I was just starting to get into music theory. So I had some bad feelings about this whole game jam idea, but the day before I decided I don't really care, and this will be a good challenge. I always wanted to try this out, and I will find out what are my flaws and what are my strengths. The day before I did zero preparations. Well, I went to bed early so I could wake up at 6 a.m., 3 hours after the announcement, but that's all. The theme was combine two incompatible genres. Let's start today. I went out for a walk and some breakfast, started to mix genres with brute force. Lots of things came to my mind, like an action card game, a roguelike shop tycoon, a rockstar simulator, don't really know what I wanted to do with that, or a survivor racing game with crafting, leveling, experience points, etc., or just a platformer tower defense, but finally I chose a horror shopkeeper simulator. I could make some really bizarre things with that, and my gorgeous art would make it even better, so I started idea storming. There is a cure on the rules and you have to survive the night shift while you also have to do your job, etc, etc. And I came up with a name, A Nightmare on the Canned Good Aisle. So I was surprised at the first sight. I thought that this theme is so bad, and now only after 1.5 hours I think, I came up with an idea. So I felt pretty good about myself, and hooray. Well, the game jam was a pretty long time ago, so I don't really know. I didn't really document it, so sadly I can only present it based on my Git commits, so sorry for that. But first I started with the map. I had to make a supermarket's interior, but I didn't really know how big it should it be or how big it will be. So I decided to make a supermarket generator, and yeah, it sounds as bad as it is. So I started making prefabs like walls, floors, ceiling lamps, shelves, fridges, stands, etc, etc. They look pretty nice relatively to my art skills, and I only used Unity's primitive shapes, so that was a good point. I mean, yeah, I did pretty well according to my... how is it called, that word? You know that word. So my first mistake was that I wanted to make a map generation nearly fully automatic. The algorithm to take care of the shelves, fridges, so it would generate everything with one click. In hindsight, it would have been much faster if only the walls, floors and ceiling lamps and etc. were generated and the rest could have been done manually, so the specially placed things shouldn't be generated by an algorithm because to implement it takes much more time than to place it manually. I was genius back then to realize that, yeah. So this overkill cost me a lot of time later on, but luckily I stopped implementing it after a few hours. So yeah. Next I started working on the customers who buy things from the shelves so the player can refill them. First I made some goods from primitive shapes and stolen textures, also made some of my own, and placed invisible markers on the item container prefabs, so goods can be placed and taken, you know what I mean. Then I started working with the customer area, and I used Knuckles as a placeholder, because it was so funny, even if it was a dead meme already in April. So yeah. First I planned on going with a basic A-star algorithm, but as soon as I started working with those tiles, lots of small issues, extra problems came up, and I threw out the idea and started implementing a basic raycast based AI. And I don't know whether the first direction would have been faster or not, but this one also took some time. Yes, the base was implemented much faster this way, but after that fine-tuning to avoid the unwanted behavior took much more time than it would have taken in the A-star way. So it was pretty frustrating anyway. Then I worked on the menu so I could get away from this hard stuff for some time, and after this I wanted to relax a bit, so I put a radio in, and then for 10 minutes I laid back and enjoyed the view of these marvelous creatures in their natural environment. So I came up with the idea of dark zones. The map consists of zones which are lit by a light bulb by default, but these light bulbs occasionally, as the game progresses faster and faster, broke. So the murderer can only walk in these zones, and the player must repair these light bulbs for obvious reasons. The murderer will chase and kill people who go into the dark zone, NPCs and players, player alike, because this is a single player game. And if a player enters, the player also hears louder and faster footsteps which are coming closer, so yeah, you get the idea, it should be pretty horrifying. This was the point. I should have known that this is pretty much feature creep, or how should I call this? So yeah, this is a big work, bigger than I expected. But at that point I was pretty optimistic and I was done with the horror part. So another tycoon part. The player also gets a money indicator, which must be positive obviously, or he will be fired. Which means he lost the game. So yeah. The player earns money by refilling stocks and loses money as long as they aren't refilled. So now dark zones are even more punishing because there are stocks in the dark zones which should be refilled. But also there is a killer, and it's very dangerous to stay in the dark zone. You get the idea. So there also should be or will be a health system and item system, so you could spend your hard-earned money on items which would make your battle against the murderer easier, and you could even kill him. Yeah, this is a pretty good idea, and I don't know how I didn't know that this will be a pretty big project, but yeah, at that moment I was pretty optimistic. So the player has to keep balance between not getting fired and not getting killed. That was the great idea. Okay, so back to work. I replaced the contact accuracies with a simple human figure, which is usually seen on toilet doors. I don't know, I find it pretty nice. It seemed aesthetic, and as I found out, other people find it nice too. So that was a surprise. Where was I? Okay. So now items are being bought by the AI, and somehow I have to make a playable game out of this. So let's implement the refill system and some basic UI for the player. So I gave the player a GTA-like money indicator. Why a GTA-like, you ask? Because I had a GTA San Andreas server for years, and I saw this sign daily, and I got pretty attached to it. So yeah, that's the reason. I also implemented a text displayer for the supermarket's manager, so I could tell some kind of story, and a basic minimap for basic coordination for the player. Then I implemented a work system which would handle the must be refilled stocks jobs, or how should I call them, like announcing them, indicating them on the minimap, and decreasing the player's money over time based on how many stocks should be refilled. Implementing the dark zones was a bit hard. So first I imagined them as a good-looking, scary place and realistic shadows and vision, etc. But then I started working on it, and my expectations went pretty much to zero. But when I finished it, it wasn't that bad. It was much better than I expected midway, so I was good with that. And this was the time when it finally came to me that there isn't much time left. So due to time limitations and tiredness, I abandoned the physical location of the murderer and also the whole health and item system. So much of the content got cut. It's like cutting somebody's gut. Okay, so where was I? So the customers and also the player now simply dies if they stay in the dark zone for too long. It got pretty much simple. It got pretty simpler than I designed it before. At least now I have experienced this feature creep thing on myself, and this is a good experience for me on future projects and future game jams. So the game is basically done now, and now it just has to be balanced, which was harder than I expected, so I gave up and decided on a fixated ending. Basically, I just came up with an absurd plot, which is narrated by the manager in the text box you have already seen, and after maybe 5 or 6 minutes of playing, I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, it's not a big thing. If you are curious, you can check it out. There is a link in the description. There is a link in the description for downloading, and you can check it out for yourself. So then I made some final bug fixes, small polishes, replaced Africa, sadly, built it for 3 platforms, made a small description and a thumbnail, and I submitted it, yeah, in a past tense. So I submitted it before, I don't know, it was 2 hours before the final submission hour or something like that. And yeah, after that I went to sleep, and finally some relaxation. Well, I've got a better reception than what I expected, first of all. I wanted it to be good in a lot of ways, so I got mediocre rating in most of the categories, sadly. But I was surprised how well it did in humor and mood. It seems like I nailed the aesthetics better than I expected. I should have focused on my strengths more. And also I used some stolen stuff, like the purchasable items, or how should I call them, which is against the rules, and next time I will surely avoid that. And it could have been better if the scope of the game would have been kept smaller and focused. But lessons I learned and how I improved myself on those and these topics will be discussed in another video in detail, I think. So leave a feedback if you want a video about that. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.